And having stores enables to do that. It's very hard to do that with an e-com presence. Actually having a bricks and mortar where people can come in and talk about it and find out more has been fantastic for us.
And then these what people share as well, and they really want to talk. That, which is great.
Well, and some historical context is appropriate here too, because this interest that you're seeing across the board with these plant medicines or cannabis, it's more a kind of return to origins, right? You're talking about products, plants that human civilizations have had relationships with for thousands of years. When you speak about indigenous cultures where it was a rite of passage to go through a psychedelic experience with ayahuasca, with mescaline, with these compounds, all the way to cannabis, which was used by the Chinese and Greeks and Persians and the Romans. And it really, and there was even research into the medical usage of psychedelics, and then kind of in 1970, right around when the Controlled Substances Act was passed under the Nixon administration, almost all these became, things we just mentioned, almost all of them became Schedule I drugs, high potential for use. And the second they got put into a Schedule I drug category, research became extraordinarily difficult, slow, defunded, and stigmatized. And so then you have a half century of lack of research. And it's really, and there's been a few pioneers who've been keeping that candle, a shelter from the wind throughout all these decades, doing the research, finding ways to get money. Now,
were they in the US predominantly? Or
predominantly in the US.
In Israel as well. CBD was only discovered in the late 60s, I think.
Oh, sorry, so a lot of the cannabis research was being continued in Israel, and then a lot of the psychedelic research was kept alive and pioneered by individuals in the US. And if you think, one last thing to think about is, when it comes to the bulk of research funding, when it comes to, a potential drug or a product you can take, so much of that funding comes from pharmaceutical companies. And that they generally are
in whose vested interest it was most
It needs to be something that they can patent and monopolize and then reap monopolistic profits off of. We're also not going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into something that's can be generically commoditized.
And preferably you're going to take it every single day, at least once a day.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so you can see how so much of the psychedelic research and cannabis research that has happened, that trickled, a lot of it's been funded by philanthropy grants.
Right.
So that's been a really interesting shift. Now, with more research, it's probably one of the main ways that stigma is now lifting.
Yeah.
I think also, I was just going to talk, James would be good to talk about this, but it's also about having real quality, transparent products available on the market that work.
Yeah. And also, we're now still finding out about how the other cannabinoids in the plant, how we can interact with those after years of prohibition, as Jeff was saying. So now to study it and see how we can use them.
Yeah. And how it very effectively all dovetails within greater interest in lifestyle